On the evening of Friday, September 13, 2013, at 11 p.m., 30-year-old Victoria Rickman placed a call to 911 emergency services. The call came from her residence located on Clifton Trout in DeKalb County, Georgia, United States of America. During the phone conversation, the woman reported shocking information to the operator. "My fiancé tried to rape me again. I begged him to stop, but I was forced to shoot him. I kept shooting, over and over. I completely riddled him with bullets, even though I didn't want to cause pain, but he refused to stop." After arriving at the scene, law enforcement officers met the same woman who had called at the front door of the house, holding a small dog in her arms. Emergency responders discovered a horrifying scene inside the house. The bedroom resembled a real slaughter, with a half-naked man's body lying on the bed, covered in blood, literally riddled with bullets. Bloody fluid splattered throughout the room. Some bullets had gone completely through. Bullet holes were visible throughout the room, including the walls and ceiling, and a large-caliber revolver lay on the nightstand. 30-year-old William Carter was pronounced dead. Victoria was in a state of hysteria from what she had seen, and she required medical assistance to bring her back to consciousness. Law enforcement officers, conducting a detailed examination of the crime scene, reached a preliminary conclusion that self-defense had taken place, as the suspect claimed. William had attacked her, as a result of which she was forced to defend herself, firing bullets erratically during the shooting. Victoria was taken to the police department to give testimony, which was more of a procedural formality, but later extremely interesting circumstances were revealed in this case. Victoria Rickman's previous marriage ended in a catastrophic breakup, accompanied by mutual accusations of cruel treatment. During the marriage period, Victoria had a son, whom she adored above all else in life. At the time of the tragic events, the boy was 8 years old. Victoria's circle characterized her as an exemplary mother to her child and a wonderful person, always ready to help and support in difficult situations. Several years after the official divorce, the woman met William Carter through work colleagues. The man had a reputation as a successful businessman and was a divorced father of one child. At that time, Victoria worked as a marketing consultant. They regularly interacted in the work environment, and a passionate romance sparked between the couple. The lovers practically never separated, doing everything together, creating the impression of a perfect couple. However, over time, difficulties began to arise in their relationship that were already familiar to Victoria from her first married life. After the couple announced their engagement and began living together, it became clear that their relationship was far from as cloudless as Victoria desired. The new partner changed dramatically, becoming possessive, humiliating her dignity, using physical force against the woman, and then tearfully asking for forgiveness for his behavior. Victoria invariably forgave him, and she and William continued life together. This represented a vicious cycle of toxic relationships from which she was unable to break free. All of the woman's close friends strongly recommended that she break off the relationship with William, warning of possible bad consequences. However, Victoria, according to her claims, was subjected to psychological, physical, and sexual pressure and could not resist it. She continued to endure everything and justify all his actions. However, shortly before the fatal events, she gathered the will and left the tyrant, who began stalking her and would not leave the woman alone. According to Victoria's words, that fatal night the former partner broke into her home and attacked her. Their confrontation reached a critical point. The man threatened and forced her into sexual acts. She resisted in every way possible, but could not fight back against her former partner due to his physical advantage. Victoria insisted that at that moment she felt real fear of death for the first time. He showed extraordinary aggression, and the woman was convinced that this night would end with someone's death, either he would take her life, or she would take his. Therefore, she did not doubt the correctness of her actions, protecting her own existence. Victoria grabbed the firearm and literally riddled him with bullets. Victoria's closest friend completely approved of her actions and was convinced that that night the woman was indeed in serious danger, otherwise she would not have resorted to using a weapon. The friend knew about domestic violence, but did not assume that the situation could develop in such a way. While the woman was sent for medical examination to confirm that she had suffered violence that night, investigators decided to conduct conversations with the deceased's relatives in order to hear their point of view and create a more complete picture of the nature of the relationship between Victoria and William. William's parents, who had just received information about the tragedy with their son, immediately refuted the self-defense version. They presented a completely different image of Victoria. The parents reported that for their part, they had warned their son about the dangers of such destructive relationships. They instantly disliked Victoria because of her brazen and problematic character. And they saw her as a predator from whom one should stay away. A couple of weeks before the tragic events, another alarming episode of their fight occurred. The parents noticed that William was bleeding. The wounded man told his family that Victoria had struck him with a hammer on the head and bitten him in the back area. The parents were stunned by this, since the head injury was extremely serious and could have been fatal. The man's family was afraid to even think what would have happened to William if she had had a firearm in her hands. After the hammer incident, they separated again, and the man's parents hoped that they would not resume their relationship. William did not file a complaint against her that time because she threatened to bring rape charges against him. In general, according to the deceased's family, the couple constantly fought. Their arguments regularly escalated into fights, with both sides showing aggression. Sometimes Victoria attacked the fiancé, sometimes he attacked her. During the 3 years of this difficult relationship, Victoria Rickman and William Carter systematically turned to law enforcement with complaints against each other, from domestic disputes to assault incidents. This information was confirmed in police reports. Victoria threatened to obtain a restraining order against the fiancé, and he threatened to bring her to criminal responsibility for false accusations. A few days before the tragedy, William and Victoria again organized a meeting to talk. But this did not bring positive results. They again entered into conflict, and William called 911 and asked police officers to help him forcibly evict Victoria from his home. When law enforcement arrived on the scene, Victoria claimed that the man had beaten her, but no obvious injuries were found on her. She was fine. The police established that Victoria was sending text messages to William's mobile phone that contained false statements that the man had kidnapped and threatened her. But in reality, he was asking her not to bother him. The police then helped Victoria gather her personal belongings and escorted her from the man's house. William said goodbye to her, saying he never wanted to see her again. The woman promised that she would not bother him anymore, but did not keep her word. Within a few days, Victoria began sending him messages asking for a meeting, but William did not respond to them. Then she developed a new plan. She made contact with his ex-wife, the mother of his daughter, and began stalking her. The ex-wife complained to William about Victoria's behavior. This drove him to fury, and he sent her a categorical text message: "You are too dangerous to be around, never contact me or my child's mother again." The confrontation between the former lovers flared up with double force. During the quarrel, William began threatening her that he would file an official complaint with the police for her attack on him with a hammer. This caused Victoria's anger, who feared that this could harm her. In case of conviction, the woman risked losing custody of her beloved son. The deceased's family believed that this was precisely what became the motive for the crime. The woman sought to solve this problem by any means and took William's life. The circumstances of the relationship between William and Victoria were becoming increasingly confusing and complex. The situation no longer seemed so clear and unambiguous. At the same time, the medical examination demonstrated that no injuries or signs of physical coercion were found on the woman's body. The examination confirmed that she had sexual contact that night, but no internal injuries were recorded. This did not resemble rape at all, in which the victim resists and receives various injuries. It looked as if intimate contact had occurred by mutual agreement. Victoria continued to insist, explaining to the doctor who conducted the examination that the man forced her into intimacy, but at the same time kissed and embraced her. In this way, she tried to justify the absence of tissue tears. However, her explanation sounded absolutely unconvincing, since only one minor bruise on her arm and one bruise on her leg were found on her body. There were no other injuries, and these bruises did not resemble fresh traces of physical confrontation, they had already begun to fade. Her fresh French manicure remained flawless, not a single nail was broken, and no skin particles were found under her nails that would have remained after a life-and-death struggle. For his part, William also had no scratches, which was also surprising. When law enforcement arrived at the residence, Victoria's external appearance immediately raised questions. She looked absolutely neat. There were no blood stains on her nightwear and body, although blood was splattered throughout the bedroom. Obviously she had changed clothes, and Victoria's hair was wet, as if the woman had just washed in the shower. The police developed serious doubts about the reliability of Victoria's story. The woman began to be suspected of deliberately taking the man's life. Forensic experts, having carefully studied the crime scene, came to the conclusion that Victoria's testimony about self-defense did not correspond to reality. All evidence indicated that William was facing away from the woman at the time of the shooting. They established that the man was standing near the bed, facing the window opening, when he was shot 3 times in the back. One of these shots filled his lungs with blood and caused coughing. This was clear from the nature of the blood splatters on the wall near the window, which were concentrated at a considerable height. Therefore, the victim was in a vertical position during the shot. They concluded that after William coughed, he fell onto the bed. Victoria did not stop shooting and delivered several more shots to his chest and head. No signs of struggle were found in the residence, all objects were neatly in their places, which also contradicted the version of physical confrontation. Based on all these inconsistencies, a warrant was obtained for Victoria Rickman's arrest. She was arrested and taken to the police department for questioning. When the woman learned that she was being charged with murdering her fiancé, she changed dramatically in the face. She was shocked that the case had taken such a turn. When police began to seize her mobile phone as evidence for expert examination, the woman began aggressively trying to get her phone back. Such behavior seemed suspicious to the investigators. Victoria seemed to be hiding something in the phone and was afraid of exposure. And later it became clear why. She really had something to hide. Investigators analyzed the correspondence between Victoria and the deceased man, as well as their mobile devices. And it turned out that William deeply loved her. He sent her sincere messages where he called her the love of his entire existence, but was very worried about her behavior and was afraid that she had gone too far with her false accusations and could get him convicted. And then messages from William appeared in the correspondence in which the style of his communication changed dramatically. During the investigation, it was possible to establish that Victoria independently sent herself messages from the fiancé's mobile device with threats of coercion, trying to compromise him. Evidence was also obtained that at least twice Victoria attacked William, but called law enforcement and claimed that he had attacked her. Victoria threatened accusations of false coercion not only to William, but also to her neighbor landlord when he wanted to evict her from the dwelling. Victoria was charged with first-degree murder, and she was held in custody without the possibility of release on bail. Victoria Rickman finally appeared in court for the murder of her lover William Carter in August 2017, having spent almost 4 years in custody. Once a bright, attractive woman who used her appearance for various purposes, she was completely unlike herself. She had become almost unrecognizable. At the court session, several men testified about how masterfully Victoria manipulated them during courtship. They lost their minds from communicating with this beautiful woman and were ready to do anything for her. Even several police officers testified that they were enchanted by her beauty and coquetry when they arrived on calls for her complaints about domestic violence and took her side, and then the woman politely corresponded with them. They regretted that they had not remained impartial and accused Victoria of manipulating them. As an illustration of how skillfully Victoria could manipulate men, an example was presented of her communication with Cobb County Deputy Sheriff Cobb Price. She complained to him about threats and coercion from William. The deputy sheriff, seeing bruises on her body, gave her one of his personal pistols for protection, the same one that killed William. This happened several months before the tragedy, and the deputy sheriff also accompanied Victoria to the shooting range and taught her how to handle firearms. The woman mastered accurate shooting. As it turned out, Victoria first called Cobb Price after killing her former partner, and then, on his advice, called 911. The deputy sheriff confirmed in court that he was enchanted by Victoria and was fascinated by her, although he was married at the time. He even admitted that he thought their relationship might move to a new level, but the man denied that they were having an affair at the time. According to him, they communicated as friends. At the time of the trial, Cobb was no longer working in the sheriff's office, he was working as an instructor at an Air Force base. As it turned out, Cobb Price was fired 5 days after William's death for refusing to cooperate with the investigation. He protected and supported Victoria. The prosecution claimed that the treacherous seductress Victoria used her feminine charms to lure William Carter to her home that fatal night. Unfortunately, William could no longer tell his version of events, but the prosecutor tried to express it for him. In his opinion, Victoria called him that evening and invited him over for intimate contact. In this way, she managed to lure William into an ambush, and when he hurriedly came to her, she used him and then mercilessly killed him, firing 9 bullets into him. In the prosecutor's opinion, even if the man had attacked her, shooting 9 times was an obvious excess, she could have simply wounded him in the leg, immobilized him, and called law enforcement. But she acted purposefully, which indicates the intentionality of her actions. The prosecutor was convinced that this was a premeditated, planned murder. Other significant circumstances eloquently testified to this. As it turned out, at the time of the murder, Victoria was already living with another man, Andrew Karam, in his home. That very night, she asked him to spend the night at his mother's house so that the woman could be alone and rest well. Victoria's manipulative abilities did not fail her this time either. Andrew agreed and went to spend the night at his mother's house. And literally 30 minutes after his departure, Victoria independently contacted William, and after midnight he arrived at her home. It is unknown what exactly the woman said to him on the phone, but probably she invited him to come over. There were no signs of breaking into the dwelling, she personally opened the door for him and let him into the house. William did not force his way in, he did not even know where she lived before she herself gave him the address during the phone call. During the court session, the doctor who examined the defendant after the murder testified, and photographs of Victoria were also shown. He reported that he found no injuries on the woman's body, including defensive ones, not a single fresh bruise that would necessarily have been on her body in case of self-defense, and there were also no signs that she had been forced into sexual acts. They had intimate contact by mutual agreement. As it turned out, the bruise that was on her arm during the examination and, according to her words, was received during the struggle with her former partner, was recorded in a selfie that she took a day before William's murder, so it definitely had no relation to her self-defense. At the trial, photographs from the crime scene were presented. William's naked body with numerous gunshot wounds lay on the bed face up, his clothes were on the floor next to the bed. A wristwatch lay neatly on the nightstand, and a gold chain was in his left hand. It did not look like he was hastily undressing, attacking the woman, and someone was interfering with him. It seemed that he was not attacking anyone, but had already begun to dress and was trying to fasten the chain when the shots caught up with him. The forensic medical expert confirmed that the man was shot from behind, so he could not pose any threat to Victoria. The autopsy confirmed that he was shot 9 times, 4 shots hit him in the chest, 3 in the back, and 2 in the head. There were bruises on his chin and arm, probably caused by a blunt object. There were blood splatters on the wall behind the curtains, the window, and a pillow on the floor. The forensic medical expert believed that William was standing facing the window when he was shot in the back, after which he fell onto the bed, and then the other shots were made. The reloading of the firearm raised many questions at the trial. That pistol holds only 12 rounds. 9 shell casings were found at the scene. 4 bullets remained in the pistol, totaling 13, so the prosecution concluded that Victoria had reloaded the pistol, and if reloading took place, then the defendant has no right to self-defense. This can no longer be considered an impulsive act, since at the moment of reloading the weapon, she could have thought and stopped, but did not do so. At the trial, the same neighbor landlord testified to whom Victoria had also threatened. When the man wanted to evict her from the dwelling, she began to threaten him with accusations of coercion, and he backed down because he did not want to deal with her. It turned out that she had repeatedly filed complaints about coercion against various men, but in no case was criminal proceedings initiated because there was no evidence except her words, and the prosecution considered it suspicious that all the men around her were coercing her. The lawyer claimed that Victoria had been a weak, defenseless woman throughout her life, a victim of violence from both her first husband and William, whom they were planning to marry. That night, William broke into her dwelling, attacked the woman, forced her into sexual acts, and threatened her with death, so she was forced to use the firearm that her friend, the deputy sheriff, had kindly provided for protection. In the lawyer's opinion, there was no doubt that this was self-defense. The defense claimed that William arrived at the dwelling in a state of intoxication and was also taking medication. His attending physician testified at the trial and said that 3 days before his death, William complained of insomnia and was taking antipsychotic drugs to sleep better. The lawyer also suggested that he might have taken illegal substances that evening, which made him so aggressive. It will remain unknown whether he was drunk or under the influence of substances that night because no toxicological examination was conducted. Former Chief Medical Examiner of Georgia, Dr. Chris Sperry, testified for the defense and expressed the opinion that Victoria made the first shot to William's chest, not his back. At the trial, Victoria's 911 call was played, and the lawyer emphasized that the emotions the defendant was experiencing at that moment would have been simply impossible to fake. She was very convincing during the call. The woman was in absolute despair. Victoria's closest friend testified for the defense, claiming that she had previously seen bruises on her that, according to the defendant, were left by William, but she had never witnessed such scenes and could not confirm that these bruises were left by the deceased. Once the friend heard William raising his voice at Victoria over the phone, and she changed dramatically in the face. The friend saw how painful it was for Victoria at that moment, so she believed that she was a victim of domestic violence and considered that Victoria was incapable of murder. She was simply defending herself. The defense also told about William's questionable past. He once had problems with drug abuse and was repeatedly arrested for property damage. After 10 years of using crack cocaine, he ended up in a rehabilitation center. The deceased's parents confirmed that this was true, but their son was able to overcome the addiction. He got back on his feet, went into business, and no longer indulged in this. They were proud of William and believed that Victoria was his last addiction. And as soon as she called him, he would rush to her headlong, not understanding how dangerous she was. The prosecution prepared a sensational video for the end, filmed on Victoria's mobile device 4 months before William's death. That time she threatened to call the police and accused her fiancé of coercion when he was kicking her out. Then the woman took out her phone and began filming, accusing William of violence against her off camera. She behaved extremely aggressively, trying to enter the dwelling, and the man would not let her in. Then she replied to him, "You can't tell me what to do. I have a gun, and I know how to use it." Victoria's behavior did not at all resemble the behavior of a woman who was a victim of violence. The conversation ended with William saying that she scared him. He didn't want to see her anymore and left. The prosecution believed that approximately the same thing happened that night, but the ending was already tragic. The jury at the trial heard 2 different versions, each of which sounded quite plausible. Now they had to decide which side was more convincing and whom they believed. Was this a case of domestic violence and subsequent self-defense, or was it a cold-blooded, premeditated murder? The jury needed less than an hour to reach a verdict. They found Victoria guilty. Victoria Rickman sat silently, motionless. She was stunned by the jury's decision and cried. When the opportunity arose, the woman addressed the court, "I firmly believe, with all due respect to the jury, that they were wrong. Your Honor, thank you for taking the time to talk and clarify the facts of this case. I am a mother whose son's life was taken away, I am a beaten woman, I am a victim who continues to suffer from nightmares and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder caused by being forced to defend myself from cruel treatment, so I ask you, Your Honor, to return my son and life to me, to return my voice and my dignity to me." Victoria continued to deny her guilt and expressed no remorse for shooting William, so the judge, despite her speech, showed her no leniency. The judge sentenced her to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Her lawyer was also shocked by the jury's verdict and the sentence. He considered it unfair because, in his opinion, all the evidence was circumstantial and unconvincing, and she deserved at least the right to parole and a more lenient sentence. While in prison, Victoria gave an interview in which she expressed her opinion about the trial and the sentence. "This is a complete slap in the face to me as a victim of domestic violence and a disgrace to all affected women, victims of sexual and domestic violence. Now this system can actually use my case as a tool for re-victimizing real victims and their rights." Victoria also denied that she was a seductress killer. Victoria Rickman is filing appeals and hopes for a review of her case, but so far she is receiving rejections. William's daughter is being raised by the child's mother, and Victoria Rickman's son is being raised by her ex-husband. That's all for now. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future content. Take care and goodbye.